Hi, it's Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead, and we're going to continue reading in our book, Escape Down the Raging Rapids. It's a D.J. Dillon book by Lee Roddy, and we are on chapter 9. Now, when we ended last night, they had camped out. They'd stopped and camped out, and DJ had overheard some footsteps going by. In the morning, Tobin and his brother Odell were nowhere to be found. But right when they were getting ready to leave, Tobin walked straight up to Brad and said, "My brother Odell has disappeared." Well, let's find out what happened. Chapter 9, A Hidden Valley. Brad asked, "What do you mean your brother's disappeared?" "Just that," Tobin replied. "I can't find him anywhere." "He's probably just gone for a walk." "Nope, he's gone, I tell you. He wasn't in his sleeping bag when I got up, so I figured he was just off getting cleaned up. But I've looked everywhere and he's nowhere around." DJ remembered the prowler he'd heard the night before. That probably had been Odell, but why would he disappear? Brad tried to reassure Tobin that everything would be all right. The rafters volunteered to help look for his older brother. DJ and Alfred joined in on the search, moving off to the far right of the others. DJ told his best friend about the sound he had heard during the night. Alfred replied, "Why would Odell go prowling around without a flashlight? Now, if Tobin had done that, I wouldn't be surprised." "Me either," DJ agreed. "Let's hope we find Odell fast. This is the second day after my flea bite, and I'd like to be moving closer to the doctor." The moment DJ said it, he felt ashamed of thinking about himself when one of the rafters was missing. But he told himself it's not selfish to take care of yourself. "I just wish we'd find Odell so we can go on." Yesterday, DJ had learned that the two guides were always up well before the rafters would normally sleep until around 7. The guides usually served breakfast at 8. The typical camp pace was slow, with gear being loaded around about 10 when the day run was started. But not this morning. Everything was suspended while the rafters looked for the missing Swarsey brother. They spread out across the narrow cove, looking behind bushes and trees, boulders, logs, anything else where a man might be. DJ and Alfred walked off by themselves, heading towards the cliff of about 50 feet high and a quarter mile from the river. Some distance away, they could hear Tobin repeating his story over and over to the rafters. "I woke up about dawn and saw that he'd left our tent. At first, I wasn't concerned, but when he didn't return in a little while, I went looking. I checked along the riverbank and everywhere I could think of, but I couldn't find a sign of him. He's just disappeared." DJ whispered, "Alfred, I wish I could believe him, but I can't." "You think maybe Tobin knows more about his brother's disappearance than he's saying?" "I don't want to sound suspicious, Alfred, but there's something about Tobin I just don't trust, especially since he knocked me overboard yesterday." "Well, Odell doesn't strike me as the most honest-looking person I've ever seen. But then I suppose that's judging a person. The Bible says we're not supposed to do that." "Hey, look," DJ pointed. "Is that a shadow on the face of that cliff? Or is it a crack about 3 feet wide?" Can't tell from here. Let's go find out. The two friends ran past some brush and boulders and on the stone face of the mountain rising sharply upward. It's a shadow, Alfred decided as the boys came within 30 feet. No, I don't think so. See? There's a light coming through it. Cautiously, the boys eased closer to the cliff, careful of rattlesnakes and loose rocks, the most common hazards in the mountains. It's an opening, DJ exclaimed, almost like a secret passage right into the heart of the cliff. The boys ran forward, pushed some brilliant green buckeye leaves aside, and touched the crack, which might have been made by an ancient earthquake. DJ cautiously peered through the opening. It ran into the back of the mountain about 20 feet, then seemed to open up into a meadow. I'm going to go check it out, DJ announced. You stay here and get help if I get stuck or don't come back in a few minutes. Carefully watching for danger in the narrow place, the boys squeezed through. It was dark between the solid rock faces, but it got brighter ahead. DJ pushed forward and stopped in amazement. Hey, Alfred, he called. What? It opens into a valley. Go tell Brad. I'm going to explore it for signs to see if Odell is this way. By the time Brad, Tobin, and Ray followed Alfred through the crack, DJ had checked around and returned to the hidden entrance. He held up a sweat-stained gray cowboy hat. Tobin exclaimed, That's Odell's. I found it right over there by that buckeye bush. DJ pointed and led the way to the green meadow. 5 people searched in vain for another sign, knowing that now the older Swazi brother had been there. Brad instructed everyone to spread out and walk to the far end of the valley, which seemed like a box canyon. The whole area didn't cover more than 5 acres, so everybody could stay inside of each other as they searched. The first sweep yielded nothing. 5 searchers came to the end of the valley, and turned around. Brad motioned for them to move closer towards each other and walk back through the center of the valley. Tobin and Ray moved well off to Brad's side, so DJ motioned for Alfred to join him. They walked up to Brad. DJ quickly told about hearing something moving in the night. Brad listened politely until DJ finished. Thanks for telling me, but right now I don't see how that ties in. Could have someone kidnapped Odell? Alfred asked Brad. I don't think so. There's no reason. Though sometimes people in the outs with the law will do hide in these mountains. DJ asked, What kind of people? Mostly pot growers, those who grow marijuana illegally. A place like this would be ideal for hiding crops from the authorities. Or you get a gold miner working the river who resents having anybody around, even passing rafters. Once in a great while, poachers give fish and game trouble here. But I've run these rivers for years without a single problem like this one. DJ stopped suddenly, turning towards the other 3 searchers. Look, DJ exclaimed. They're shouting and motioning for us. Brad outran DJ and Alfred to where Tobin and Ray were bending over a downed sugar pine log in the middle of the meadow. Tobin shouted, He's unconscious. By the time the boys reached the log and peered over, Brad had examined the missing Swazi brother. His left leg's broken. Simple fracture that we can splint until we reach a doctor at Summit City. Tobin asked, Why is he unconscious then? Probably from the pain. I don't see any sign of a head injury, no concussion or anything obvious. The guide looked around and pointed. Looks as though he was standing on that log and slipped. Caught his foot on the branches of this downed tree and twisted it enough to snap it. when he fell sideways. "Boys, would you run back to camp and tell the others? Tell Connie we need the first aid kit." As DJ and Alfred obeyed, DJ was aware that the sun was rising high in the sky. Smoke from the forest fires was less than yesterday. The boy wondered if that was because they were moving downstream, away from the worst blazes, or because the fires were being brought under control. At Stony Ridge's only church, everybody in the small logging community had solemnly gathered in the little white structure. They sat together under the corrugated sheet metal roof and the open belfry, packed with thousands of holes where woodpeckers had stored acorns. The opening hymn had been sung. A time of prayer was next. Sam Dillon was aware that others were stealing glances at him. That means, looking at him quietly. This caused him mixed emotions. He was glad they were there, glad they'd come to pray for DJ and his best friend. But Dad Dillon also knew that some of those sitting in the sanctuary were secretly grateful that it wasn't their children out there somewhere in the middle of the forest fires. He couldn't blame them, but it bothered him. He turned slightly so he could see Alfred's parents and little brother. They were sitting across the aisle and 2 rows forward. There was a slight slump in Mrs. Milford's shoulders, but she straightened suddenly and looked up at the big lay preacher as he slipped into the pulpit. Sam Dillon wondered if Mrs. Milford had straightened her back in hope. Unconsciously, he did the same, sitting up straight behind his wife and stepdaughter. From the pulpit, Brother Paul Stagg's voice rumbled up from his massive chest. The building seemed to tremble with the power generated by the big man. "As you all know," he began quietly, looking over the packed church, "not all of our children returned safely from youth camp yesterday. DJ Dillon and Alfred Milford are missing." Dad Dillon was aware that the eyes again darted towards him, to Mom and Pris, on to the Milfords, and then back to the pulpit. The lay preacher continued quietly, "We're going to pray for DJ and Alfred right now because we all love them and they are part of the family of God." Dad Dillon lowered his head, hearing the words echo in his mind. "We all love them." That reminded him of yesterday's short discussion with the lay preacher. "You never told DJ you loved him, have you?" Brother Paul had questioned him. Then, for no reason Sam Dillon could see, Brother Paul had asked, "Sam, did I ever tell you the story about my father's death?" That still didn't make any sense to Sam Dillon. He'd have to ask Brother Paul when it was all over. Sam Dillon glanced at Kathy Stagg. She sat stiffly, red hair cascading down both sides of her face. She turned her head slightly as a tear slid down her right cheek. Her mother reached her arm and back across the pew and drew Kathy toward her. For the first time, Dad Dillon realized how much Kathy cared about DJ. Brother Paul's prayers always began quietly, then rose in volume as earnestness increased. "Lord," he said so softly the word was almost lost, "we are gathered here in love to ask for the safe return of the 2 boys whose usual places are empty in our church today." Dad Dillon didn't hear any more. His eyes began to feel hot and a mist formed over them. "I love DJ," he thought, "but I never told him. I wonder if he knows how much I love him." DJ did not know. He walked away from the river camp with Alfred, Brad, and Connie and the others as they decided what to do with the injured Odell Swarsey. Alfred asked, "You worried because of what Brad said about losing most of the day while they went to get Odell ready to travel, or about going over Dead Men's Falls tomorrow?" "A little of both, I guess. We should have reached Summit City tomorrow, and a doctor. Now it'll be at least Tuesday." "You'll be okay, DJ." "Yeah, unless we lose another day or two getting there. You heard Brad say that once his raft overturned in the whirlpool at the base of Deadman's Falls, and they were trapped there for nearly a whole day." "Well, that won't happen, DJ. Not to us." "I hope not. But being short a paddler because of Odell's injuries, added to our inexperience, well, I just have a feeling we're heading for mighty big troubles." And that is the end of chapter 9. I'm glad they found Odell. Wonder what the story is behind why he was there. Well, it's Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead. I love you, I really do. And I want to pray blessings on you and yours, in your house and out of your house, in the day and the night. Whatever you do, keep dreaming and keep a story in your heart. All right, good night.